I don't know if that'll go on. Yeah. And that's got to go. I don't think I can prostrate with that on. I just have to say I've got it. Look, she even put seeds in at the top. She thought of everything. Incredible.
Yeah, and the laptop should be mute, otherwise we could have not everyone, only what on YouTube we see only what the main one is on the only what is on the main on the main. I don't know what to call it. On the
Screen?
main screen, yeah, exactly.
Screen. Okay, we should start. We should start.
Yes.
Let's start. Good morning, everyone. If you'd like to join in prostration. So we'll offer a mandala offering to all the Buddhas here, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, every atom of space, offering everything most gorgeous in the universe. Sachi Puhi Shushin Meto Rahamari Rablingshi Nidekem Hari Sangye Shinu Mekte Oaedro Namadak Jina Trupasu Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamni Riyatayami. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. So setting our motivation then, like that vast, extensive motivation for this teaching and listening, reflecting on how to develop bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. Especially today, as we had our Anzac Day, we've got our poppies. Sort of, I don't know if I'll stay on. And rosemary for remembrance. And thinking, you know, at this time when we have so much suffering in the world, of course, there's always suffering in the world, but so much manifest suffering in the world, and particularly today, remembering all those who've lost their lives in any war ever, worldwide war, or, you know, the big ones, small ones, civil wars, so forth, all the way down to in the home, in, you know, domestic violence and murders, and in the community and so forth. And may peace arise in the minds of all beings swiftly, because in that way we get peace in the world. And particularly now as we see this war on coronavirus, and I think more than 50,000 in America passed away, I think, is it? 200, nearly 200,000 in the world. Quite amazing. Here we are with our precious human rebirth to make the most of that, to protect our own minds, to develop our own great compassion, loving kindness, bodhicitta, for the benefit of all our suffering, kind, mother, sentient beings. And as Lama Zopa Rinpoche has been teaching every other day from Kopan on this topic, so there's a wealth of material there on the FPMT website, but particularly potent that Rinpoche has given us prayers. Like this morning, we offered light at dawn on the Nalanda Master's Garden here, and prayers, and particularly from Tagtong Gyalpo, who in Tibet in the 14th century, born in the 14th century, but in the 15th century, the you know, great architect, great engineer who built all the iron bridges, which are still used today, and wooden bridges as well, and so forth. It was an emanation, it is said, of Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, so Buddha. But at a time when there was great disease in an area of Tibet, and he went there and was able to pacify the disease and pacify famine and pacify war. And so as Lama Zopa has been reminding us in this time of great degeneration, which is right now, you know, first of all, worldwide war, and then we have worldwide famine, and then we have worldwide war, all the world. Rinpoche has emphasized that again and again, all the world. So we really, you know, the urgency of this is so, it's right with us, right? Right here. So, so today, I think we'll be, there's 32 online, 32 Dharma friends online, hello. And with me here in the Gompa is Sky and Venerable Chokyi, and Margot, who comes and goes doing the Zooming IT thing. You checking? She's checking right now. So I think I think everybody's got used to Zoom, because, oh, did you mute them all? They're all on mute, right?
All are mute.
All are mute, yeah.
If it needed, we could unmute.
Yeah, so we have the power here to unmute you, but we'll leave you on mute for now. And then if you want to ask a question as we go along, of course, I'm going to experiment with chat rooms. We're going to experiment with having breakout room at some point. So, but if we want to unmute, if you want to ask a question, you can, if you can use the chat, and that will send up a question that I can read here. And then, yeah, because we like to have discussion. Of course, if we're all here physically, we'd be having at some point discussion groups. So I'll start off first. So if you want to, for now, just keep, well, you are on mute, so you don't have a choice there because we've overrided your choice. But also, if quite a few of you have got your video off, which is good for that time, and then when we have questions or when we go into breakout, of course, you've got to have your video on to talk to each other. Okay. Well, you can talk to each, you know what I mean. So you can see each other when you talk to each other. Anyway, we'll give it a go. It's all new technology. So this topic of bodhicitta, I think some of you have joined us since I sent out all the materials, but I think most people have the materials, the outline for what we're covering. So from 9 to 12 today and tomorrow, and then next weekend as well. And so we will have break time, and as requested during the break times, we'll leave everybody in chat mode together. So if you want to make your cup of tea and have it all together, it's becoming a trend in society at these times. So why not? We can do that. Okay. So I was thinking of going for about an hour and then having a break. So we'll just see how we go. If you feel like we should break before that, let us know. I think that should be okay. Okay, so this topic, how to develop bodhicitta, in the materials I sent out, there's quite a lot of recommended readings. And then also I sent yesterday some links, some that Deb shared and some that I shared to the FPMT videos with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, but also Geshe Tenzin Zopa, who's teaching on this topic currently. So there's lots there. Okay, so starting off, first of all, how to develop bodhicitta. First of all, investigating, well, what are we saying? We say this word bodhicitta, we say this, we've just recited the refuge, prayer for taking refuge and generating bodhicitta, this prayer that comes from Lama Atisha. And the second half of that is the generating bodhicitta, the aspiration to become a Buddha. So two aspirations, twofold aspiration to become a Buddha ourselves, not to, be able to put a plaque up and say, hi, I'm enlightened. As many people have heard me say, if anyone ever did that, you'd run in the opposite direction, wouldn't you? But also, so the becoming a Buddha is because, just like Buddha Chenrezig, not bearing to see the suffering of sentient beings. So not bearing to see the suffering in the world. That's how it is right now, right? Can't bear to see all that suffering, not just the suffering of the people who are ill, the people who have died and all their families, but all those who are, the medics and the front line, the paramedics. And we've been getting, messages from them saying, how do I cope with anxiety and fear, my own, and then trying to pacify others' anxiety, fear, very hard, isn't it? And then also everybody on the front line, the shop keepers and attendants, people serving us in whatever capacity, or the police, everybody, right? So amazing. So cultivating this mind, bodhicitta, so bodhi, which means Buddha, bodhi, Buddha, the awakened mind, the enlightened mind, citta, that's the mind or the consciousness, or heart, same thing. In Tibetan, we have the same thing, heart, mind. So in Tibetan, Buddha is Sangye. So Sang, having purified all the afflictions, which are the cause of us for being reborn in samsara, in other words, a suffering existence, having this body subject to birth, aging, sickness, death, having this suffering aggregate of the body, but also the main suffering of the mind, or the mental afflictions. So Buddha's purified all those afflictions, all the disturbing states of mind, and Ge, having completed all and manifested all the positive qualities of mind, which are in our nature, that are natural to us. You get the rubbish out of the way and all your natural qualities flourish. So you can think about when the Buddha first arose from that Bodhi tree, we now call it, at Bodh Gaya, we now call it, after having attained enlightenment, and then after the first 7 weeks of practices around there. And then the first person he encountered, what are you, could see that there was some amazing qualities of this being. And the Buddha said, I'm awake, I'm awake. So wake up to reality, see reality as it is, be in sync with reality as it is. So that's the Bodhi mind. And so then the bodhicitta is that mind, that aspiration to achieve that state, the complete awakening, the enlightenment, motivated by a strong, it's got to be on the foundation of love and compassion. So we'll go through all these steps of how we do that by various methods. Love and compassion for all beings, and wishing them free of suffering, free of the causes of suffering. So we can say that, this is training our mind, familiarizing. We do this by setting our motivation, as we just did. But then, as I think Guru Rinpoche said, we set our motivation and we say that, but it's not yet strong enough. We have to familiarize with that over and over in our own mind, in our motivation, but also in how we engage with others. So the practices that we engage with. So cultivating the attitudes of mind that support the developing of bodhicitta in our own minds. So this is like, it's an open-hearted attitude. It's a warm heart, a kind heart. And if we think about, this is the entrance to the great scope, the presentation on the great scope of the Lam Rim, the whole graduated path to enlightenment. We've got the 3 scopes. And so the middle scope, those of you who were with us when we were doing the module on samsara and nirvana, feels like an eternity ago, doesn't it? But it wasn't. It was only a month ago, maybe 6 weeks, maybe 7, actually. Samsara and nirvana. So the motivation for the, sort of middle scope, being of middle capacity, is for self-liberation. The motivation to recognize our own suffering and say, hey, I don't want to keep having this existence after existence of suffering for my own sake, can't bear it. And so cultivating a mind of renunciation or of definite emergence, the wish to definitely emerge from this. Right now, I think we all definitely want to emerge from social isolation, don't we? But we're getting very good at connecting with each other while we're so-called compassionate distancing we're doing here in the Gompa. Compassionate 1.5, well, 4 square meter distance. And I'm sure we're all practicing that quite well. Compassionate distancing. So here we're entering the great scope and saying, not only for myself do I want to be free of all that, but just look around the world, see all the suffering. I can't bear to see these suffering beings. So I want all them to be free of that as well. So this is a vast, vast mind. If we think about our world today, there's so much, a mind of looking after number one, a mind of selfishness, of consumerism, of greed, even in this time of, people taking a step back while they're in social isolation and so forth, of prioritizing what we want to do and be in the world. And there's that sort of conversations going on. And yet we still see this incredible greed and self-centeredness. I mean, I'm sure we were all shocked. I continue to be shocked when we hear more about that guy and his Porsche in Melbourne, speeding, and then pulled over by the cops, and then the other cops come, and even when the truck plowed into them, and the officers pinned under the truck, he's complaining about, you wrecked my Porsche, with a few other expletives in there, and I just want to go home and have sushi. I mean, that's a very unbalanced mind, but it shows the extreme of attachment. This guy who just only ever wanted to drive his Porsche around, him and his Porsche, he didn't care, all about me. So he shows that very graphically, that mind. the danger of that self-centeredness and selfishness mind. So we can see examples of that. And it seems like, you know, in our world, if our world is like that, whatever, you know, we might feel like it's a weak flame or, you know, just, I haven't yet got, you know, sort of uncontrived bodhicitta, which is spontaneous, which is always arises. You know, we're inspired by our teachers, His Holiness Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who just seem to ooze compassionate concern for others. So they are great role models for us to follow. But we can say, oh, well, I only have this sort of, you know, little flame of that. I have the aspiration for that. But that is so precious, so valuable in this world. It's something quite profound in this world to cultivate that. You know, when I asked Geshe-la, how do I respond to these paramedics and nurses who are saying, I'm overwhelmed with anxiety and I'm overwhelmed with fear for myself, let alone trying to, you know, pacify others' fear and anxiety, that the main thing is thank them, thank them. And we see that around the world, all the rituals of clapping and thanking and so forth. So, you know, to really ourselves take great delight in whatever it is, whatever mind we're cultivating to benefit others. It's so profound because it's like going against the mainstream. Although I think at the main moment, the mainstream seems to be very compassionate, you know, that voice. Let's hope it lasts because, you know, we are hardwired to compassion. But on top of that, developing a greater foundation of compassion that's just not for me and mine, my people, my family, my country, I think in America, it's sort of like some states are going against, you know, and, oh, my state wants to go back to work. And it's like, you prefer to, oh, sorry, I'm trying not to be political, but it's hard. Like, you want to earn the money or you want to save your life, you know? So, of course, we know the answer for ourselves. So this thinking about the individual or mine, whatever's mine, breaks down a sense of community and community responsibility. So I think we can build on what's happening in the world now, that there seems to be an increasing sense of community responsibility. We might say right now it's enforced, because I think in Sydney I saw when they opened up the beaches, they closed them again straight away because people were not doing social distancing and sunbaking. So it's like we need the external constraints to be able to do that. And this is why, like in the Buddhist context, the external, if you like, external constraints are our vows, our ethics. Well, the vows are in the mental continuum, but our practice of ethics. So this is where we come from the medium scope and particularly the lower scope, very much emphasizing practice of ethics, of good conduct. And if we look at the great holy beings of the past, how they guarded, you know, like Lama Atisha guarded completely, perfectly all vows, Lama Tsongkhapa, all these great holy beings, because they understood karma and the karmic consequences. So being able to, you know, those of us who have vows, to hold them purely, to watch our speech, watch our actions, and on top of restraining from causing harm with what we say and what we do, already hard enough, right? But to think, whatever I say and do, may it be of benefit to others. If we set that motivation every morning, and for as long as we're able to keep it and remind ourselves of that, we're practicing the mind, we're cultivating, developing the mind of bodhicitta. So by doing that, we can make a huge difference in the world. And we really need to spend time meditating, reflecting on cultivating these positive states of mind, because right now our mind is very weak in that aspect. Even you've been cultivating for some time, some of you, we still see that grasping mind come in. It's not to beat ourselves up, relax. We're in samsara. As long as we're in samsara, we're going to have this self-grasping attitude, self-cherishing, self-preservation, all of that. We can realize that so does every other sentient being have that as well. So the essential point of the Buddha's teaching, well, the essential points of the Buddha's teachings come down to two things, isn't it? The philosophical view of dependent origination. Interdependence. We see right now, we can see it at a subtle level, our global interdependence. This virus, which we can't see, has made us very aware of our global interdependence, hasn't it? Very aware. I mean, we're seeing so many graphs and so many, if one person's there, how many that spreads, and then how that spreads, and then how that spreads, and then how that spreads. Really clear, our global interdependence, but even at a very subtle level of, interdependence, which is the unique teaching of the Buddha. And then also, that's the philosophical view, and then our practice, non-harm. No harm to any being, without exception. And that's where we have to train our mind. Those beings that we have difficulty with, this is where we come along to train our mind in relation particularly to those ones, or those that are not even on our radar, we're indifferent to because they neither harm us nor help us, those ones as well. So Lama Yeshe called this bodhicitta mind a healthy mind. He said, you're Westerners, you don't need to use, Sanskrit terms. There's nothing inherently more profound about a Sanskrit term, but a complete mind, a healthy mind, a mind in sync with reality. Right? So we turn around a narrow focus on my own fears, my own wants, my own desires, and create a spacious mind, an open attitude, which turns us into a complete human being using our infinite human potential, our human mind that distinguishes us from our animal mind. Otherwise, we're no different from animals, being propelled by greed or being repelled through aversion and toggling between the two. Almost like an immediate reaction, rushing to judgment, which is out there, not judging ourselves, judging others, isn't it? So the attitude of bodhicitta allows us to have more space into our mind, into our mind as well, to open up and see things more clearly, isn't it? But we have to begin this with ourselves. And this is in the Buddha's teaching, compassion first for ourselves by recognizing the reality of our own situation. So this, on the foundation of the Four Truths and understanding the different levels of suffering, particularly pervasive, compounded suffering of having a body and mind, having the five aggregates in the first place, recognizing that we often, in fact, 100% of the time, create our own problems and suffering. So rather than projecting out there, recognizing our situation, and then realize I'm not alone in this. Everybody else, I'm not the only one who has conflict. I'm not the only one who has anxieties and fear. Just starting to think like that is itself liberating, a liberating mind. And then on the basis of observation, that just like myself, all other beings want to be happy. We can observe that. We see, I was looking at a photo of a cat, because they showed this cat, and I looked at it closely because I thought they were talking about how cats can be transmitted COVID-19. They can get the virus, right? So if you get the virus, you send your cat away. They can't give it back to you. They can't transmit it themselves, apparently, but they can receive it. So I was looking at this cat and I was thinking, has that cat got COVID-19? I didn't have a label on it. And then I realized, no, I was lying on its back in the sun, getting the sunlight coming in through the window. So it was in bliss. So if it was infected, it was in blissful infection, if there's such a thing. Ooh. Infected with bliss. So, of course, all of us, we all want to be happy. We all, in that way, we are the same. So we connect with not what divides us, but what brings us together. What unique thing is not wanting to suffer, whether we're animal, whether including the insects and, all living beings, seen, unseen, whatever realm of existence, as well as humans. So this mind, vast, spacious mind of bodhicitta is quite the opposite of the self-cherishing mind, which is like spiritually suffocating mind. It's an uncomfortable mind. It's like, driving a knife into your heart. It's, no good. So then, seeing, traditionally, we have this teaching on bodhicitta, starts with the great benefits, how wonderful this mind of bodhicitta is. And so to contemplate why, give us more inspiration to develop this state of mind. And it's, it's good to remember these, reflect on these over and over and over and over and over again. So it says that bodhicitta is the entrance to the Mahayana path, the great vehicle, the great scope, the path of the bodhisattva who's made a commitment to say, I'm working for the benefit of all beings. Okay, at least having the aspiration towards that, quite profound, aspiring bodhicitta, being of definite lineage, being it says child or heir of the Buddhas or the family of the Buddhas. In other words, becoming a trainee Buddha, taking baby bodhisattva steps towards becoming a Buddha, becoming a bodhisattva, a being with that aspiration to work for the welfare of all sentient beings. And the way we can ultimately do that is by becoming a Buddha, developing the qualities, the perfect positive qualities, ge, those ones, which is including the mind of omniscience, unique to a Buddha, able to know the minds of all other sentient beings, so be able to perfectly guide all other sentient beings, able to see how to, all the past lives of sentient beings, know where they've come from, and simultaneously, right? So many qualities of a Buddha that are not shared by bodhisattvas, but then many qualities of a Buddha that are shared by bodhisattvas, which then outshine those spiritual practitioners of the lower scopes who aiming solely for their own liberation from suffering. So the solitary realizer arhats, hira arhats, working for their own personal liberation. Of course they have compassion, no question. It's innate, we have this compassion, no question about that, but it's not the focus of their practice is on self-liberation. So the focus on cultivating the mind, the wisdom realizing emptiness, the wisdom realizing how things exist, having a direct perception of that is already an exquisite mind, no doubt. The wisdom aspect that then purifies or pacifies or eliminates the afflictive obscurations that obscure our mind, or the disturbing states of mind. Of course, we all want to be rid of those. But by engaging in the Bodhisattva path, on top of that, purifying, eliminating all the more subtle obscurations of the mind, the imprints on the mind that obscure knowledge of reality, the very subtle level, the subtle imprints of grasping at things you might have realized that are, the emptiness, but still the mind grasping at the appearance of that. So it's much more subtle. So being able to purify the knowledge obscuration, so then you can attain omniscience, right? So it's much more profound, so that in that way, you outshine spiritual practitioners of the lower realms. It doesn't mean, you develop a mind of pride to say, I'm better than you. Not at all, because all of this is the Buddhist teachings, So it's already quite profound. So we see, the Dalai Lama in the world has to be the most profound example of a shining beacon Buddha, Chenrezig, in human form for our benefit in the world, has such a profound effect. And we see that affect people, Buddhist, non-Buddhist, people of high status, people of no so-called worldly status, poor, rich. His Holiness doesn't discriminate between any of those. Equal regard. This is, the amazing mind of a Buddha, just equal regard to all, regardless of whether they harm, help, or do neither. So these are marks of a Buddha, and we can see that shining example in this world today. We are so fortunate to have His Holiness, and to have at this time, all the practices His Holiness is advising us to do. So we've been doing here daily, and so forth, and others been doing all around the world. So precious, to actually have the guidance for us to follow at this time. And of course, also Lama Zopa Rinpoche oozing Bodhicitta, every pore of his body, like never thought for himself. So in this way, we can see the examples who outshine, who are like the sun rising in the world, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says. He doesn't say it about himself. I'm not saying that. He definitely doesn't say it about himself. And as such, you become a supreme field of offerings. So, we make offerings to the Buddhas, we make offerings to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, we rejoice in all their merits. And it says that, by rejoicing in all their merits, then you get, if it's a Buddha, a 10th of merit. So it seems to me that's the way to go. A 10th of limitless merit is limitless, right? And, so, and Bodhisattvas and so forth. And because we can see that it awakens our Buddha nature. It awakens our true inspiration, our true direction, where we want to be. I want to be like that, That's what I want. It's been very interesting for us here as Sangha in this time that very kindly some students have been making offerings. This microphone offered. We've got the new microphone for Zoom. And the food offerings, we're receiving food offerings. We feel like we're a proper monastery now. we're not saying don't come back. I mean, we want to welcome you back as soon as possible. And we have to have big parties everywhere as soon as we can. But anyway, for now, we can't do that. But it's just, so as Sangha, you know, representing, trying to be good, representative of the Buddha, of the lineage and so forth. You know, our training ground as well. And by engaging in the Bodhisattva path, you amass an enormous accumulation of merit. Why is that? Because your mind is so vast and your aspiration and motivation is not just for yourself. So it is so enormous. You know, I remember His Holiness teaching one time on the refuge and Bodhicitta prayer and saying, you know, when we think of the merits, by my merits of generosity and so forth, think of all beings' merits of all times. So then the mind becomes more vast. And so your practice becomes more vast. So it makes sense, doesn't it? Because then you accumulate more merit. It says with ease. Now this means after familiarity. It gets easier, because we habituate our mind to it. We familiarize our mind with it. Right now, I can say my mind is very habituated to anger. It's something I've been working on for a long time. So I don't have to habituate anymore, thank you very much. You know, that it'll come without me even wanting it, you know. So it will come along. And it's just like, aha, here comes danger. So it is habituated to that from lifetime. And desire, we live in a desire realm. We're habituated to desire. Just say toilet rolls. Or what else? Hand sanitizer. I don't know, maybe that's sucked off, but rice, flour, the grasping mind, you know. So we're habituated to that. So now by familiarizing with engaging in positive actions, positive speech, cultivating the positive states of mind over and over again, it does indeed become easier because it becomes our nature. It is our nature, but it becomes more natural, more familiar, more who we are. I think one of these ads on I've been watching the ABC a bit just to keep up with the news and what's happening. And one of those ads, and it says about becoming who you want to be. Something like that. That's what this is. Anyway, you quickly purify sins. I have a problem with the word sin, actually. I don't know why I left it in there. Only because it's my Christian background. But negativities, purifying negativities. So and the imprints that have laid on our mind from harm we've done in our past, through our past, ignorance, attachment, anger, you know, the three, you know, main poisons, but all the other afflictive states of mind that then obscure our mind, so you can quickly purify that. Lama Atisha, again, a great example of that, isn't it? That even though Lama Atisha, you know, is known to have kept all levels of vows purely, really, really inspirational, but still the moment a negative thought arose in his mind would, you know, if he was out riding, get off the horse, get out his stupa, set up his little altar, Vajrasattva practice, purify the mind immediately. So we can do that, nip it in the bud as soon as we can, you know, be inspired by that to purify. And then, of course, this is also on the basis of a mind of concentration. You know, if you do for example, the Vajrasattva practice with pure concentration, then the power of that it's more powerful. And of course, the four opponent powers, you know, generating a mind of strong regret for whatever, even the thought of negativity, just that, even before, hopefully, before it comes out the mouth or comes out in actions in a regrettable emotional episode. So before that happens, regret, the remedy, whether it's Vajrasattva, whether it's doing prostrations, whether it's doing water bowl offerings, whatever practice we do to passive meditating on emptiness, very powerful purification practices. And the power of restraint, making a promise, I won't do this again. And the refuge, the power of dependence, both in dependence on Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, but also in dependence on other sentient beings. This is where we come to cultivate the mind of bodhicitta, conventional bodhicitta, in relation to other sentient beings. Because it's in relation to other sentient beings we have these disturbing states of mind in the first place, isn't it? Or actions and so forth, to purify. And to inspire us, you soon complete the entire path and its levels. I mean, when we say soon, I think it's a countless great eon, but hey, it means sooner than you would by following, the lowest, lower vehicle path. So you cut off, a couple of countless great eons in that process. But it's dependent on the strength and the power with which we apply our practice and the frequency with which we do that, how far we progress. But then rejoicing in how far we progress every day, every positive action always magnifies that, gazillion times. And especially if we then rejoice in what everyone else is doing. So I got an email last week from someone saying, I don't know why you're all doing all these practices. You should be out there helping people, And it's like, well, actually, if we went, I'm sure if I went into a hospital and said, let me help, they'd say, go away, because I have absolutely no skill in that department. But I have got a skill in this department of, doing the prayers, doing the practices and so forth, to be able to benefit beings. And of course, we can't see the benefit of that necessarily even this lifetime. And most likely not this lifetime, but for the happiness of others, become a fertile source of every happiness for other beings. So not necessarily instantly, although we can see differences, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says. If you say 10 malas of On Mani Padme Hung, the mantra of compassion, then you go into the water, when you can go back into the water again. Oh, I think you can go to the beach. Someone's going surfing from here. I think they're allowed to do exercise. And all the beings in there get blessed, or, you're blessing any being that touches your skin and so forth. So it is having an effect, it's having a profound effect. You see someone like Lama Zopa Rinpoche and his relationship with animals, they all seem to come to him, I think in Adelaide with the Mahamudra retreat, and he had all the scorpions, and he found out that they like to feed them milk. So he'd give them milk, and the scorpions all come around. Everyone else is like, scorpions. A profound being. So, but even those of us who say, well, I'm not there yet, and hey, look, yeah, I get it. I'm certainly not there yet. But in the meantime, we think of becoming that fertile ground of happiness for others, and the extent to which we don't harm others is already quite profound, not killing animals, not eating them, not, and chatting to the bush turkeys. Of course, as soon as you give them food, they want to move in with you, knocking on the door. Where's the next bit coming from? They're missing the cafe, the Big Love Cafe. That was an easy source of food, and now they're relying on bush, actually. It's just what they're made to do. I haven't looked for any chats. Ah, good. Virginia's got clear sound now. Okay. Okay, so one way of doing this, you know, when we're looking at the 4 immeasurable thoughts, immeasurable loving kindness, you know, how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings, not just myself, were to achieve Buddhahood. May they achieve Buddhahood. I myself will cause them to achieve Buddhahood. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. And then where Lama Zopa's instruction to meditate on transforming our body into a wish-granting jewel that gives them what every being, what they desire, every temporal and ultimate happiness. So of course, if we can give them medicine, if we can cure them, or not cure them, but if we can protect them from coronavirus and treat them and so forth, those people who are good at that can do that. In other ways of being able to benefit others. But the most precious one is, as Geshe Doga says, you know, being even more precious than a wish-granting jewel that only gives you what you can, you know, in this life, in worldly existence. It can give you everything, you know, these magical wish-granting jewels, wherever they are. But yourself becoming that jewel, in other words, the jewel of the Dharma. So whatever level of Dharma we have, by embodying that in our own lives, then that becomes the gift of Dharma to others, you know. So that is most precious. We can all do that. We don't have to say, I'm now giving you a Dharma lesson. We just embody that, as our lamas do. They embody that. So the foundation then for developing this mind of bodhicitta is the qualities of love, of unconditional love, that say, you know, we say that a mother has for her only child. Or that, you know, you think of, and you might say, oh, not my mother. Mother, father, brother, sister. In fact, it's good to go through the whole lot, you know. But we know that a parent generally will do anything for their child, isn't it? They'll go into a burning house. They'll go in, you know, if their child's drowning, they'll jump into the river to pull them out. They'll do anything, you know, put their own lives at risk for their only child. And as we go along, there's all the contemplations of the kindness of the mother of this life, or whoever's played that role in this life. And then, you know, love, and so the love, wishing them every happiness, and the compassion, wanting them to be free of suffering. So then why not just start with that? But in fact, the Buddha said, oh, actually, you have to take a step back, because right now, our mind might do that for our only child, but they won't do it for our only enemy, so-called, the one we don't like, or however many there are, won't do it for all of those who we are totally indifferent to, that we don't even notice that they exist. So we have this impartial mind. We have this mind that makes judgments on the basis of, oh, you're my friend because you helped me. You know, even when we do those meditations on loving kindness, and let's say put in front the person you have difficulty with, and of course we say, and put behind the family, and they go, oh no, that one's in front, you know. That member of the family is in front. It's true. They know how to rub us up the wrong way, press our buttons. They know us really well. So they're great teachers, aren't they? So those ones as well. So we have to, you know, a precondition to develop this vast, extensive mind of bodhicitta is, first of all, developing an even-mindedness, which doesn't exclude any being from our loving concern. That is a big job in itself, isn't it? Almost seems impossible. But we think, you know, in this rhetoric of you know, our coronavirus times, it's interesting, you know, we have this, you know, you keep hearing, The virus doesn't discriminate. So we've seen this, you know, what's his name? Boris Johnson, or other world leaders actually, or leaders of, you know, high up ministers in Africa and maybe other places as well. Doesn't discriminate whether you're poor, whether you're wealthy, whether you're from this country, that country, whatever. There's no discrimination whatsoever. But also the people treating those with the viruses. You know, hopefully this is true, but I think true, you know, they don't discriminate. You know, everyone's treated, right? So we've had all those cruise ships, and we haven't said to the people on the cruise ship who get infected, you know, the ones from other countries, oh, well, you're not Australian, so we're not going to treat you. I mean, that would be tragic. So, of course, you know, cultivating an even-mindedness, which doesn't exclude people on the basis of anything, you know, whether colour, whether belief, whether socioeconomic status, whether culture, anything. You know, during the week, I had the great fortune to be able to, because we can Zoom, I've been on so many Zoom meetings. You can Zoom with people all around the world, but I was on one with the, you know, women's interfaith network friends in Sydney that've been sort of part of that network for, I don't know, 13 years. And so, of course, you know, all from different faith groups, and the woman presenting every month, you know, normally we meet at, I don't very much these days because I'm in Queensland, but meet at Parliament House. So now we're meeting on Zoom, and the woman presenting was Quaker. And so she told us, you know, it was quite interesting on this, you know, the main principles of Quakerism, of one of which is this, the even-mindedness, the mind of equanimity, coming out of a culture in the 1600s, I think, in England, when there was, you know, a great level of those who had wealth displayed it, you know. It's when you see all those fancy, well, we would say costumes, which was their dress with the wigs and the this and that, very, you know, flashed around their wealth. And then meanwhile, you had destitute people as well. And so the Quakers went, that's why they wore simple dress, you know, to just sort of cut across that. And they said, we don't even have like ministers of religion. They don't have raised platforms, you know, where someone sits higher than the other. Everyone sits in a circle, everyone's equal, and everybody's contribution is equal, because you get a sense of everybody's own, you know, tapping into their own spirituality is equally valued, you know. So that's this quality of valuing that. Or we look at someone like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, of course. I greet everyone as a dear friend, everyone as a dear friend. So it doesn't matter who it is. So having that mind, you know, that wishes the well-being of all. Okay. So I was thinking at this point, it's about 10 o'clock, around about the next few minutes, to maybe we just spend a few minutes in a breakout room. Shall we take a break? And then maybe we spend a bit of time in a breakout room. And then this is to experiment the breakout room, so that you can maybe introduce yourself to just, how many people we got on there? I can't see how many people we are, but maybe we'll have about groups of 5 or 6. And then you can go into those groups, and I'm just waiting for Margot to come, and she's here right on cue, to put you into a breakout group. And then we can all come together back in 10 minutes. But maybe just go into that group, introduce yourselves, what you've heard so far, what resonates with you. And then we'll come back into one group, and then people can get a cuppa or stretch, and we'll take it from there. Okay. So see you in what will we do? 5 minutes? 10 minutes? Did I say 10 minutes? 10 minutes. See you in 10 minutes. We've got a little group here as well.
Okay, so how many? We have 36 participants.
So put 6 groups.
6 rooms.
6 rooms.
Okay.
For 10 minutes. She's puffing and puffing coming up the hill.
Yeah. But I hope it will work. Oh, open all rooms. I will be also in one room.
Yeah, you're in this room.
Yeah, but I'm still on YouTube. I'm still on Zoom. So I will see if I am in one room with someone.
Is everyone in a room now?
The host is inviting you to breakout room. Join. Okay, so I will be in the very half room.
Who are you in a room with?
Oh, with Sarah. Hello, Sarah. We are together in the room.
I don't know if I'm in a room or not. Am I in a room?
I need to find my.
What are you looking for?
Oh.
What? Have you gone?
Yeah, so keep going because I'm taking.
What was that?
Yeah, you know, because I'm in the break room. Also,
Yeah.
So I'm listening what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But I'm also looking at my bag because I have there my power bank and water. Oh, there is that. Okay, so I don't know if.
So that's about 10 minutes and then we'll bring them back.
Yeah, so after 10 minutes we will stop.
Yeah, and then we'll have it so they can chat together, including us. So we're unmute from this end when they come back.
Okay, so we will stop. We will stop the.
Was it set up for 10 minutes?
I don't know.
It was yesterday set up for 10 minutes.
So if
would it be the
was,
same setting?
I hope. But if not, I will.
I've got a thing that says close all rooms, so I could.
Yeah, so we could just probably press this button
Yeah.
if it didn't close.
If it doesn't close, yeah.
Because I don't think that he remembered the settings from yesterday.
Yeah, probably
because
not.
I put the new number.
Oh, okay.
So I think it is even easier to just close it.
Yeah, I'm trying to scroll down without. Don't know how to scroll. Maybe I have to go. Some of the people didn't join because I can see who's active and who's not.
No, because now she is doing something on Zoom. Maybe because people are now in the rooms, different, online. And
what time does she start?
At maybe at 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock. It's 9 o'clock now.
Yeah. Because we are doing teachings, and now we put people to the rooms for 10 minutes. And we will finish it.
I've got you one of your original books.
Oh.
Are you coming in here today?
Yeah, because now work. So maybe
If you want to come to my room after lunch.
okay, yeah, after 12, yeah, so 12 I will finish.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Oh. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, unfortunately I didn't take my power bank.
Oh, she says she's lost Zoom on her computer. I don't know what that will mean for. Good. And then will it come on? Will it unmute?
Unmute them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Maybe because now we have the statues. Oh no, I haven't been sleeping a lot. Yeah, no, I think the.
Hello, welcome back, those who are back.
It's just my knees still hurt, and
You've been unmuted,
Okay,
and we're just
great.
waiting for more people to join because some
No,
are still
otherwise I
making their
think
way
it's
back
okay.
from their
I
breakout
felt
room.
like one
We're
day
in the
again
middle
it
of
was
that,
easy,
but never mind.
but otherwise I forget about it. Mm.
We better turn off our videos, do we? Because of the bandwidth.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
turn
yeah.
the sound off. Turn the sound off. Turn the sound off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unmute yourself because see if you
Okay,
can
yeah.
unmute yourself.
Is it morning tea? Morning tea?
Okay, not
Okay,
unmuted.
enjoy.
Unmute, but unmute
Oh
them.
wow. Nice. Is Grace? Oh, cool. Okay, it's a whole program.
We're just having to unmute the laptop itself so we can hear
Yeah.
you.
Yes, they're unmuted.
Okay. So welcome back. Anybody like to share from their discussions so far,
Oh, okay, yeah, I'll just.
or have questions
Yeah.
or comments?
Yeah. Okay.
Will tomorrow's meeting have the same ID?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, sure, I'll do.
I don't think we're hearing you. If
Who was that? Was
someone's
that you?
talking.
Good morning.
I have something to say,
Yeah.
Venerable Chokyi, if you hear me. No?
Can you hear me? This is Ingrid.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can someone send a
Maybe behind.
Yeah, will tomorrow's session be the same time?
we've got some, oh, are they seeing us?
Yes,
Yeah,
we can see you.
I can see you.
Send a
now.
message if you can see or hear us.
Good. Oh, yeah.
Me. Is that yes to both? Yes, okay, you can see and hear because we're not hearing you. We've unmuted from this end and our computer is doing something of its own accord apparently, which is probably not unusual.
We can hear each other, but you can't hear us.
Yeah. We can hear each other.
So the questions will have to come on the chat. There was already a question there about a simple 3 to 5 minute practice. So we can do that.
Sorry, is it back happening? Sorry, I don't have any audio.
So Ingrid wanting to say something. Are you able to type it? Because
she raised her hand.
Audio.
hi Ingrid.
Yes. Hello.
See this?
Yeah, tomorrow's meeting has the same ID was my question.
Cannot hear her.
Okay, so Ingrid, are you able to type it? Because we're having a challenge with the sound at this end. And you can hear Margot, that's great. You can hear us both, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
See us.
Yeah.
So,
Hey.
okay.
Hello?
Yes, we are having the same ID for tomorrow, yes. Okay. Can you just scroll up?
Same
There's a
time?
question there.
Scroll up.
Same time.
Yep.
Good.
Back down. So I'm just going through any questions. Okay. Okay. So a simple 3 to 5 minute practice, I think we can do one on the basis of this equanimity meditation. Sometimes it's also called metta meditation, loving kindness meditation towards all sentient beings. So this is a good one for cultivating this even-mindedness. So where you're sitting, you know, first of all, setting a strong motivation to cultivate a mind of equal regard towards all sentient beings without exception, which is a very pure positive motivation. Then turning your attention inwards, just focusing on your breath for a few moments. And using the power of the mind, visualize in the space in front of you 3 people. Actually, 4 people. Visualize, first of all, an image, a replicate of yourself in front. And then visualize somebody who upsets you. Probably don't even want to visualize them, just thinking about them, seeing them, hearing them. Your mind becomes unhappy. That person. Someone who irritates you, rubs you up the wrong way. We know who they are. And then next to that, visualize someone you are already close to, someone you love, may not be yet pure love or unconditional love, but close, someone dear to you. Just by seeing them, your mind becomes happy. And then next to that person, visualize someone you're not familiar with, a real person, someone you see around, maybe you see at the shops, but you don't interact with, especially in these days. We're doing a bit less of that. But, someone who is not someone who either you regard as of benefit to you, nor of harm to you. So your mind normally would have some indifference. So then you can think, how you regard and looking at yourself, the normal regard you have for yourself, and then the normal regard you have for the one you dislike, to maybe probably a mind of aversion, and then the one you like, a mind of attachment, and then the one that is unfamiliar, a mind of indifference. In particular, focus on the one that you dislike and think, what is it I dislike about the person? Why do I get upset with them? What have they ever done to me to make me upset? Or maybe they continue to do. So it will be some harm, obviously, with their speech, with their actions. So in the Lambrim, it talks about the uncertainty of friends and enemies. So we can think this person in your life that you currently dislike may have been at some time a friend or close to you. And this is one of the disadvantages of a life in cyclic existence of samsara, is that we can't be sure of friends and enemies. Our friends can become enemies, our enemies become friends, strangers become friends, they become enemies, and so forth. And think, although this person is currently giving me harm or irritating me, or I don't like them, or has done that even maybe for a short time or even for a long time, but given on the basis of a continuity of mind, in other words, our mind's continuous, if we trace back from this life to past lives, that this person in a previous life could have been my mother, most likely, has been close to me for a very long time, in many lifetimes, maybe even in this life. So the harm they're giving in this life is like a drop in the ocean of the closeness and loving concern and regard they've held for me in past lives, since beginningless time, and the affection we've shared. And yet right now I treat them as someone to be avoided, someone to disregard. So thinking like this, thinking here too is a suffering sentient being. They, like me, are suffering. They, like me, want to be happy. If you think about yourself and all the happiness you want in your life, and try and generate that equal regard towards this one. May you be well. May you be happy. Maybe you live in safety. May you live in comfort and ease. So we cultivate over and over again these thoughts, these aspirations, reframing our idea of this person, the person we label as enemy out there. You know, as the Buddha said, if one tries to befriend an enemy for a moment, if you try to befriend an enemy, they become your friend. And the same thing occurs when we treat a friend as an enemy. So therefore, the wise ones are never attached to food, clothing, reputation, friends, enemies, understanding the impermanent, temporal nature of relationships. And then think about this one person next to them that you feel close to already, you feel loving regard for, who makes your mind happy, who makes you feel happy just at the thought of them, let alone you see them or hear them. The one you regard as your ultimate friend, the one closest to you, more close than anyone else. And just see the mind that has attachment to this one. You know, not bearing to be separated from them. You know, we have this regard for them because in this life they benefit us, have benefited us, resources, supported us, maybe giving us wise counsel, understanding, love, giving gifts. Sometimes even on the basis of very limited reasons, very limited benefits, we hold that one dear. Our mind becomes happy and excited. But this one too has not always been my friend. Maybe even in this life, you know that, has not always been dear to me. At some point, they were a stranger in this life, perhaps. Unless they're your parent or sibling that's older than you. In many previous lifetimes, they've also been a stranger or been an enemy, you know. Not necessarily as a human being. Could be an animal that's going to have you for breakfast. So that in past lives, this one has hurt me so much, I've generated strong aversion towards them. So it doesn't make sense to have so much discriminating attachment, desirous attachment for this person because of their benefiting me. So we think like this over and over again. We can contemplate the many different people we feel close to in this life and think it isn't always like that, that the relationship's subject to change, it's impermanent. Of course, they want happiness just like me. So you can wish, send that loving concern from your heart towards them. May you be well, may you be happy, may you live in comfort, may you live in ease. But then also try to generate that same loving concern towards this one you have difficulty with, equal regard. Even we've got to fake it for now, at least having that thought starts to soften our hearts towards them. And then turn to your mind towards the one who's less familiar, who you don't really know. You don't really know them. You don't know much about them. You've seen them around. You know, I don't know them. They're not part of my group. And we have a sense that we maybe have no connection with them. They haven't connected with me in the past. They're not connecting with me now. They probably won't connect in the future, you know, even if we had those thoughts. So it's completely wrong, isn't it? You know, our friends before were in this category, maybe our enemies as well before were in this category. Even not in this life. Actually, we can think about those in this life who were friends who now are complete strangers. We don't even know, maybe, you know, from childhood to now. We don't even know, maybe, even if they're still alive sometimes. And even we do, you know, you encounter a childhood friend, but you don't have anything in common now. But in previous lives, that one has been your friend many times, they've been your enemy many times. Sometimes your dearest friend, sometimes your worst enemy in your regard. So just as you equalize that loving concern from your heart towards your friend, towards the one you have difficulty with, also towards this one, may you be well, may you be happy, may you live in safety, may you live in comfort and ease. This is having equal regard towards beings, whether they harm, help, or do neither. Thinking this way again and again and again, training our mind. So you can think there's absolutely no reason to be upset and feel so much aversion, irritation, frustration, disgust towards the one we dislike, who's been your friend numerous times. Likewise, there's no reason to be so clinging, attached to the one who's my friend of this life, because they've been my enemy before and might be again. So reflecting again and again like this, seeing that categorization, that discrimination is purely a manifestation of our own mind. It doesn't exist out there inherently. If it existed out there inherently, it's because we're grasping, our mind grasping at an inherent me and an inherent other and creating a separation that doesn't exist. So feeling connected heart to each of these beings. None of these relationships exist that way forever. No one is a friend, enemy, stranger for all times. And just thinking of ourselves, see how we're changing moment to moment. So is every other being. So is our relationship with every other being. Subtle level of impermanence, of constant flux, constant change, opening the mind towards that. Having equal concern. May you be free of suffering and its causes. May you have happiness and its causes. May I be responsible for this by myself alone. So this sense of even-mindedness is a wonderful thing to cultivate. It's a powerful meditation to do on a daily basis. It doesn't make the other person behave differently, which is what we want, right? But it does make us behave differently. It makes our attitude change, which is what this training is all about. So I think I'll try and, no. I'm trying again to unmute everybody. Okay. Somebody talk and I'll see if I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Chokyi.
Hi, Venerable
Okay,
Chokyi.
it's not working because I presume somebody was talking. Can you hear each other when you talk?
Yes.
Can hear each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Virginia, hello? No. It says it's unmute. Oh,
Yeah,
no,
she
I
is.
can't hear.
Hi,
Sorry about
Chokyi.
that. Can you hear each other? Okay, chat amongst yourselves. That's right. We can't hear you, but you can hear you.
Okay.
Hey, Gompo.
Okay.
Yes, hello.
All right. So I think if you want to go and get yourself a cuppa or go for a stretch, and then we'll come back. Is 10 minutes long enough, folks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we can come back and go on to the next installment.
Wonderful.
Yep,
Okay.
I got a few thumbs up. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Enjoy your
Yeah.
cuppas. And so we're leaving you on mute so you can all talk to each other while you have your cuppa. Enjoy that. And we'll talk amongst ourselves here.
Thank
Okay.
you.
See you soon.
Thank
See
you.
you.
I know it's weird from this end, I can say. I hope it's very chatty that end because it's very weird from this end because we're very quiet.
Funny talking over Chokyi here. Hey, Gompo, I lost
For
everything
10 minutes? Okay.
except I could hear everyone when we went into the chat room. Is anyone
They
there?
can hear and they can see. We can't hear them. We're
Anyone hear
unmuted, and even you can see the sound going, but it's not working. I wonder if it's our volume. A simple thing. No, it's right up. Can't hear anything. It's right up, unless she has to unplug something. What, unplug something? Yeah, so we can hear. I wonder if we had headphones. That would be a way. Oh, yeah. Margot, maybe, do you think if I plug some headphones in, it would help? Oh, I'm getting something on here. Deb says she can hear me, but she can't hear anything else. I just wondered if I had headphones plugged in, whether I'd actually hear them. I don't know. I didn't try that. Do you want to see?
Hi, Chokyi.
Do you want to plug in headphones? Because they're all chatting to each other and they can hear each other. Can you hear me at all?
I can hear you, and there are a few people
Where's that coming through? Your phone?
From my phone.
Okay.
What do you want to see? If we plug, we can hear them with the earphones.
You can see that.
Hello. I can hear I could hear you, and we could all hear each other. Now I can't hear. I can hear you guys, but I can't hear anyone else.
Well, hopefully they can.
Well, because there's no one's. So Virginia can hear me and you, but nobody else.
You're coming out. I can hear you through Sophie's
online. Not on Sophie. She's got the Zoom open.
Okay, I've just unmuted myself because it.
If I go on
I've just unmuted myself. It keeps muting itself. Okay, Virginia's unmuted herself.
Now it's working.
Yeah, the Gompo. I can hear Gompo now.
Yep, they're changing this. They're playing with the settings about muting and unmuting people. So that's probably what's happening. There's a setting in the Zoom host that you can not allow people to unmute themselves. Can anyone hear me still?
Steve, I can hear you.
Great. I'm just going to wait, let them play with it and go have a cup of tea and come back.
Yeah. Can you hear me now, Gompo?
Yes, I can hear you, Deb.
Okay, I'm on the phone to Chokyi.
Fair enough.
So what can I keep unmuting myself, but it keeps then going on to mute again.
Could be something to do with the phone. I don't know.
So that's weird.
Yeah, so I've just unmuted myself again. Every so often it comes up and says that the host has muted everyone, and we have to then go and individually unmute each other, unmute ourselves.
That means nobody's hearing each other. All right, okay. I'll hang up.
Yes, and when it went into that little chat room.
My phone still.
Huh?
It's still from my phone.
They
But
said,
we can't hear through the.
so unmute. It's gone on to me. Should be unmute. Yeah, but it doesn't. Look, it goes on to mute.
Maybe.
But then we're going to unmute ourselves after you unmute.
Simple thing.
I did the simple things.
Well, I'm unmuted on my computer. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm unmuted.
Yes,
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yep, okay, but Chokyi can't. Yep.
Well, since we went into breakup.
Okay. This all went pear-shaped when we went into the into those little rooms.
Oh, well, as long as we can hear Chokyi, that's what's important.
So if we don't go into those little rooms, then we might not have these problems next time.
Well, that's a shame because I didn't have any problems going into the little
Do it
rooms.
even manually and it won't.
Yeah, I
Even,
spent the whole time trying to get back into Zoom, and then it just came back when it went back to the main group, but it's been mucked up ever since.
Can you hear me?
Okay, that's a shame, Deb.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
Talk again, Chokyi.
Can you hear me, Leonie?
Work it out.
Chokyi was just talking to me. Sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you.
We're just, I shouldn't, no, it's not too many people. We should
Yeah,
have
I can hear
100.
you, Chokyi.
Yeah, no, Leonie's talking. It looks like it's unmuted, but it's not. We can't hear. Thanks for
Sorry,
showing.
Deb.
Yep.
How you going?
Oh,
Just
good.
check
I can hear
that
Chokyi
you
now
can
too.
hear each other. Leonie, can you hear other people?
Yeah, I can just hear you.
Okay, all right. So we'll just take a few minutes more for you.
Right. I'm going to go and have my cup of coffee so I don't make noise.
Yeah, I'm going to go get a cuppa. I'll be back in a minute. I'll put myself on mute in case the birds make a noise.
Who's that? I'm not the tech node, Virginia.
Some strange noises.
So the allow participants to unmute themselves is on. We're not able to.
It's all good. We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay, we can get started again if everyone's back with the refreshments. Speaking of which.
Yes. Yes. Someone asked me whether I can hear them.
Okay, so the break's finished. How long's the break? It's finished, gone, like a flash of lightning. Okay, so we'll continue on and see how we go without having another break, maybe. Okay, so we were contemplating the mind of equanimity. So thank you for the question of what it is a very powerful daily practice to have, and developing this mind of equanimity is the basis for then being able to apply the different methods that there are for developing bodhicitta. So if we think that a Buddha has this, perfected the equanimity of regarding all beings equally, holding them in equal regard, and actually holding them in equal regard simultaneously. They say, a Buddha's always smiling at you. Are you always smiling back? So if we think about that, the smile towards others goes a long way. A reminder, keep our heart open towards others, wishing them well. Even we're saying it inside, as we're engaging in our daily activities, as we encounter people from our compassionate distancing, we can think, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be free of coronavirus and any other virus, any other disease and so forth, and may you have the ultimate happiness of enlightenment, So we can train our mind like that. So there's seven fold cause and effect, this method, sevenfold cause and effect from Arya Asanga, or at least we've got the transmission of that from Arya Asanga, but, you know, from the Buddha's teachings. So 7 points, of which 6 are the cause for then the 7th, which is the mind of bodhicitta, cultivating that, right? So Arya Asanga, who's like in the 4th century, was the, you know, him and his half brother Vasubandhu, who you know, sort of composed the teachings on Abhidhammakosha and, you know, phenomena and so forth. The reality of that. And then Arya Asanga is said to have received direct teachings from Buddha Maitreya. Of course, we have the story, famous story about Asanga doing retreat and, you know, doing long retreat. And so he went into retreat, and then after 3 years being frustrated because he didn't see, you know, he was trying to have the direct connection with Buddha Maitreya. So he sort of had a moment of frustration, came out of his cave and thought, that's it. And then he saw that a groove had been worn away on the outside of his cave by the rain, and created a gutter. And so he thought, well, if the rain continues to persist, the water flowing and so forth, to create that groove, maybe I can persist in my retreat. So he went back in, of course, for another 3 years. After another 3 years, comes out frustrated, still haven't seen Maitreya. And so then he sees that from the bird's wing has against the side of the rock has worn away a spot, and then he goes back into retreat. Anyway, so this happens, you know, a few more times. So by observing the perseverance of other beings and other phenomena, he's able to then continue on with his practice until finally, after 12 years, he goes, well, that's it, you know. And so he starts walking away from the retreat cave, and he sees a dog lying there that's covered in maggots. And his pure spontaneous compassion arises for both the dog who's diseased and for the maggots. So he thinks, I'll get the maggots off the dog. But then he thinks, oh, but I don't want to hurt the maggots either. And so he, out of his great compassion, he goes down, closes his eyes, and very gently you think, oh, well, I'll take the maggots away with my tongue. And he puts his tongue out, and he puts his tongue out, and he puts his tongue out, and he can't get to the maggots, you know. It's just like putting his tongue further and further and can't feel the maggot, and he's got his eyes closed. And then he opens his eyes, and there's in front of him the dog's transformed into Buddha Maitreya. And he doesn't go, oh, wow, finally I've seen you. He goes, so where were you when I wanted you?
Yeah, I will. All right. Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you.
And Buddha Maitreya's got his robes on, and he says, see there where the spit is? That was when you every night turn around and spit at the wall. It was on my robes. You just couldn't see me because it was the obscurations of the mind. And through your generating this compassion, that final veil has been lifted. And still Maitreya was not convinced, shall I say. And so he says, how do I know it's true? You know, and so he said, well, you know, the dog became Maitreya, whatever. He said, well, Maitreya says, well, I tell you what, you take this dog and put it around your shoulders. In other words, Buddha Maitreya's around it, on his shoulders, and go down into the village. And most people saw nothing at all. They didn't see a dog. And apparently somebody saw a little foot of a dog. So they had more pure view, you know, because it was an emanation of the Buddha Maitreya. So eventually Asanga was convinced that he was hard to convince. So there was Buddha Maitreya, and he got all these direct teachings from Buddha Maitreya, including, you know, the ornament of clear realization, which later, you know, we see Lama Atisha, who had like 150 or so teachers, you know, so who mapped out this whole path to enlightenment for us, a whole lamp on the path teachings, which is the basis of what we continue to study on the Lam Rim, you know, whether it's the extensive, middling, or abridged, as Lama Tsongkhapa expanded on that, the Lam Rim Chenmo. So when Lama Atisha went to Indonesia to get the teachings from Lama Salingpa, Sunavanavipa King, who was in, I always have to think, Sumatra in Indonesia, you know, sort of took 13 months to get there, and even then checked out with the students of Lama Salingpa that he was the real deal, you know, before he actually, after having made all that effort. And so Atisha stayed there for another 12 years in Indonesia and got all these direct teachings. It said that the teachings came there directly from Buddha Maitreya as well, on the, you know, ornament of clear realization, on the Bodhicitta teaching. So anyway, so this from Arya Asanga, great scholar, great practitioner, and wrote many discourses himself on the Mahayana, a great vehicle, middle way approach. So on the basis of having cultivated a mind, an even-mindedness, a mind of equanimity, then the invitation, or what we need to do, is come to regard every living being as someone connected and related to us. So this is, we see on what basis we are connected to every other sentient being, because at the moment, because of this mind, partial mind that discriminates, we separate between ourselves and others. Not so, I mean, of course, we're physical separate entities, who's not saying that we're the same, but we create a distance in our mind depending on how close we hold the other, you know, how far away we want to have them, if we have an anger towards them or so forth. So this comes from our mind. So this classical presentation begins with, first of all, cultivating a mind that sees all beings as having been our mothers in past lives. So we you know, we talked about previously that the loving concern of a mother for her only child. And so then we extend that out to all others, that if we have beginningless past lives, we have to come to the conclusion that in all of those past lives, numerous past lives, we've had mothers, of course. And the mother of this life has been a mother in a past life, but, you know, brother, sister, enemies, strangers, they've all been our mothers in past lives. Human, animals, insects, we've been there, we've done everything ourselves. So all these beings have been our mother's conclusion. And we'll elaborate this in future sessions. So just giving the outline. And then all beings, because they've been our mothers, if we think about the mother of this life and the kindness of the mother, or whoever's mainly played that role in this life, whether it be a guardian, a stepmother, father, you know, carer, so forth, how their kindness to us, such that without them we couldn't exist. And we'll elaborate, you know, when we come out of the womb as a baby, you know, we're not self-sufficient. So anyway, we'll go into some more details about that one. So each of these has to be meditated on, contemplated on extensively, and each following the progression. And then on that basis, on the kindness of the mothers, thinking, you know, generating a strong wish. I've got to repay that kindness. It's immeasurable kindness. If I think of the mother of this life, and certainly having done, at one time spending a few weeks on the reflection of all the kindnesses of my mother of this life, I couldn't get to the bottom of it. And on top of that, she was still alive. So there was still more kindnesses coming all the time, you know, up until her last breath, right? So, you know, we contemplate like that just like the mother of this life, and we can use that as a very potent example, the person who's played that role. Similarly, in past lives, but also our connectedness towards others is also our interdependence. Without other beings, we couldn't survive, you know, for our food, for our clothing, for our environment, for our housing, for our everything. We need each other, right? So a series of contemplations around that. So just going through it quickly at this point, and then we'll elaborate out. And then on the basis of that, wishing to repay their kindness, this cultivation of this pure love, unconditional love, not just towards our family, friends, unconditional towards all beings. So we're expanding, widening the circle of love out towards all beings. So that itself, or each one of these stages has its challenges for our minds, you know, but this is on the basis, if we're wanting to develop bodhicitta, if we're wanting to become a Buddha, you know, you become a Buddha on the basis of, you know, being a bodhisattva, which is on the basis of bodhicitta, which is on the basis of great compassion, which is on the basis of compassion, which is on the basis of this loving concern, which is on basis on the equanimity, the even-mindedness. So you can trace back like that we have to cultivate these in sequence. We do cultivate them in sequence. So the love that's wanting every happiness, as it says in the Four Immeasurables, you know, may you have happiness and the causes of happiness. So this is the type of love we're talking about here. So it's not the love of attachment, you know. It's a very pure and all-encompassing love. And then, you know, some of the references here, like the Dalai Lama book on widening the circle of love, which adds all these booster techniques, different meditations we can do to cultivate these aspects in our mind, or as Lama Zopa, cultivating the bodhisattva attitude. So training our mind in that loving concern for others. And then compassion, the mind of compassion, not bearing to see the sufferings of others. And again, including in that the one who's our enemy, who becomes, let us say, the difficult one, who becomes our object, or maybe my current object of compassion. I think my current object of compassion is that guy in Melbourne, you know, having difficulty in your mind to say, because you've got to say, this is one. I mean, you just got to look at the irrational behavior, irrational, and then so much incredible attachment to a car. I mean, if he could be reborn as a car, he would be, I think. But maybe he's going to be reborn as a being who lives in a car. Well, he's still alive now, so he's got a chance, you know. He's still got a human mind to work with. No doubt, quite a few years in prison coming up. Anyway, so the grasping mind of attachment, totally, and so you've got to have compassion for that it's a totally deluded state of mind, just because we can identify with that ourselves, maybe not that particular incident, but our own grasping mind of attachment to then say, wow, that is suffering, that is suffering. So having compassion. So we have different levels of compassion, you know, certainly we have compassion for those in our own family, even our own species right now. That's very strong, of course, with, you know, COVID-19. We, you know, even we've never had these, you know, sort of, even it's worse than normal pneumonia, right? It's incredible. It's incredible. Even we haven't had that. We have that empathy because we know what it is to suffer. And we have the wish for others to be free of all that, of course, but extending that out towards all other beings of all realms of existence throughout all times. That infinite compassion is another level of compassion that is the one we're wanting to develop this great unconditional compassion as well. So sometimes we have, like at the moment, crisis compassion, but what happens, of course, as we saw, again, the beaches, you know, people are left back to the beach, the compassion goes out the window and the, oh, phew, here I am at the beach, what were they? They got into trouble because they were lying on the sand. I mean, I think it's, sorry, not getting political, but good for mental health, of course, but the restrictions for the benefit of all, we've got to actually go by the guidelines, and they're there for a good reason. We have to follow the government guidelines. So the government says, you know, don't loiter and go and do your exercise, but don't loiter because, you know, there's that 15-minute apparently interaction that within that time you can be infected. So, you know, we have to follow those government guidelines. They're not to punish, they protect. So like that, compassion. So those going to the beach, having compassion for everyone else going to the beach and saying, okay, for the benefit of all these other beings, I'll just do my walk along the beach or swim and then go home. Yeah. We're all, as a world, having to learn a whole lot of new routines very, very quickly. So we've got a lot of opportunity for our minds, see how our minds are with that. Great opportunity. So on a basis of that, love and compassion, we generate this extraordinary or special concern for the welfare of all beings. Special because it's unique, you know, it's not an ordinary mind. It's this mind of taking universal responsibility. I must take responsibility by myself alone, as Lama Zopa says, by myself alone, to work for the happiness and well-being of all sentient beings. And this is where, you know, when we recite the four immeasurables, the four immeasurable thoughts, that's exactly the mind we're generating, immeasurable compassion. So the aspiration, how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were free from suffering and the causes of suffering. Just that attitude itself, amazing, right? And on top of that, making that strong aspiration, may they be free from suffering and its causes. May all beings be free of suffering and its causes. And on top of that, I myself will take responsibility to free them from suffering and its causes. And then we think, but I'm not up for that. That I can't do. You know, I can't take on all the suffering of all sentient beings. And we have practices to help us to do that, but it's sort of like, okay, I'll take on the suffering, but not too much, not all at once, because we're not there yet. Of course, we're not there yet. So please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. So we invoke our teachers, our gurus, and so forth. You know, please inspire me, please enable me to be able to do this. In other words, as the Buddha said, I can't implant those realizations into your mental continuum. I can't wash away your sins, you know. All I can do is teach. So guide, show the way. So that's how we get the blessings, by following those teachings, following those instructions, just like this set of instructions from Arya Asanga. So generating this extraordinary concern, universal responsibility. And I think it's interesting to see where and when we always have the opportunity to practice this. Not that, oh, you know, when we do the, you know, somebody should do something about it. Oh, let that be me. Let that be me. If where we are capable of doing something about it. There's so many things that seem to happen on a daily basis. It's just like, I will do it. I will do it for the benefit of others. Not to big note myself, not to puff up with pride, just saying it needs to be done. I'll move that thing out of the way because I don't want anyone else to trip on it, for example. There's so many little things we can do. And so these are the 6 points which we're going to spend a bit more time on. And then on the basis of that, the spontaneous bodhicitta arises when we see that becoming fully enlightened like a Buddha is the best way to help sentient beings, all beings, we generate the mind of bodhicitta. So there's two levels here. One is the fabricated or contrived bodhicitta. It's not meaning fake, it is bodhicitta. It's the aspiration that we familiarize with over and over again because it's not yet spontaneous. It's not yet just arising 24/7. You might say it's arising more often in my mind to benefit others. Good, if we practice this. But the more that we practice, the more it will eventually arise as, you know, like our precious lamas oozing with bodhicitta. They don't have to think, oh, I think I should generate bodhicitta today. I mean, of course, they set a bodhicitta motivation for our benefits to show us what to do. But everything they do is motivated by bodhicitta. So eventually, but in the meantime, practice, 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 practice. So this is what we're doing. We're training our mind in this common path of the higher capable being, the being of the great scope. So keeping in mind that, as Lama Tsongkhapa said, this path to enlightenment is a training for one individual. It's not like we jump in the deep end of the pool and go, oh, compassion and love, that sounds nice, I'll do that one. We have to, it's on the foundation of the training in ethics, you know, the training of zipping the lip and watching be skillful in our actions of as much as possible to do no harm. But even like we're having a discussion in the teaching with Geshe-la yesterday, even when you unpack doing no harm, it's almost, well, it's impossible, isn't it, to do no harm? You know, just by being in the world, we are causing harm to others, you know, insects and things, without even seeing them, let alone, of course, we're not intending to, we don't have a motivation to. And if we realize that we've done some harm and then purify and so forth, we're minimizing the karmic fallout for ourselves. But if I tread on an ant, it's dead either way, you know. It's still dead. So I've still harmed that being. My intention wasn't there, certainly. And I'll do the prayers and practices and take it around stupas and so forth, do whatever I can, you know. So we do our best, basically. We do our best. So this is this sevenfold cause and effect for developing bodhicitta. And a very good, I haven't got the book here, but a very good unpacking of that, you know, putting it out nicely in a presentation, Geshe-Dampa Tekchop, The Kindness of Others. It's one of the free books, free teachings from lamayeshe.com. If you go on there, you'll be able to download it as a PDF. Of course, at this point, I would normally say, oh, there's plenty of copies in the library, so when the break time comes, go down to the library, but we're not doing that at this point. Well, a couple of us here can do that. Okay, so like that. So that's a very good one. I mean, there are many, many, many commentaries on it. It's a very good one. So this training the mind in the common path of a capable being, as it says in the Guru Puja, when we recite these verses, as we do here every morning, having considered how all these miserable beings, which means any being in samsara, all of us, have been my mothers and have raised me in kindness again and again, I seek your blessings to develop effortless compassion, like that of a loving mother for her precious child. So this is even before we get to uncontrived bodhicitta or even contrived bodhicitta, effortless compassion, not just for the mother and not just for a precious child like that, but for all sentient beings. So generating this mind of conventional bodhicitta, developing a sense of equanimity, as we did in that, you know, sort of brief meditation reflection, equanimity between myself and others. There's no difference between myself and others. None of us wishes for even the slightest suffering or is ever content with the happiness we have. Realizing this, I seek your blessings that I may generate joy for the happiness of others. In other words, joy in being the cause for their happiness, wishing to be the cause for their happiness, but also joy for when they experience happiness. Of course, we know temporal happiness is exactly that. Anything based on the senses, any sort of nice sounds, nice taste, the comfort of the body, and so forth, you know, nice smell, sights, all of that is at best lasting the whole of this lifetime. But even then, we know it doesn't last the whole of this lifetime. The chocolate cake is very nice for the first few bites. The coffee aroma is very nice for the, apparently up to the first taste, you first sip, and then after that, they, baristas say, oh, and nobody really tastes it after that. So it must be the smell, it must be the delight of the smell, I don't know. Or maybe the experience of your body being wired. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's terrible. It doesn't last. We know these things don't last. So we want their ultimate happiness, which is their Buddhahood. We would be delighted. It's sort of a win-win situation if all the beings in the world become Buddhas. Wow, this whole environment transforms more than it's transforming already. You know, as their images from India, seeing them yesterday. They've seen in one area the guy who took the photos of it. They're on the foothills of the Himalayas, but he's never seen them his whole life because of smog. So now they're all staring at the Himalayas going, oh, they really are there, you see? So Mother Earth has got a bit of time for healing and then hopefully for us. So this is the job of a bodhisattva is to make connection with as many other beings as possible, to hook them in, you know, to Lama Yeshe used to do this, going to shopping centers and things like that, and going to the beach and all that. Geshe Sotram, of course, a bit deprived at the moment due to compassionate distancing and social isolation, or is a bit deprived from his frequent visits to Sunshine Plaza. And we're sort of like, what's Geshe doing? I don't know, must be hooking in sentient beings. He says he's shopping. Anyway, it's our job, right? To attract beings, to be that beacon of hope and love and concern for others. And then you do that and you observe that animals aren't threatened by you. Or like Om Mani Padme Hum, as I said, you go in the water and it blesses them, or they touch you on the skin. Apparently also snakes don't, I can't say don't come near you, because we live in a place where snakes do come near you, but you're not threatened. I guess because they don't feel threatened, because the energy you're putting out, you know, we know that when we put out the energy of anger, it's a very disturbing energy, isn't it? You can feel it, it's palpable. The energy of love is also palpable. It's a bit more subtle, you know, the energy of love, the energy of kindness, the energy of our compassion towards others. This is why so many people are attracted to the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, all these beings who just, it's palpable, their level, their power of this. Okay. So in the notes, I'm now up to session 2. As people who know me know, we get there, but it was difficult to, you know, sort of try and work out the sessions on our new timetable and technology and so forth. And as Sky was saying in the break, you know, we're normally used to having a lot more chatting here in the Gompo. It's very quiet. Yeah. So, rejoice for Mother Earth. Even the water in Venice is clear. Boy, water everywhere. Thanks, Julie.
I've only seen the bottom of this one. I'll try and see the whole of it. Then the one before. I'm just reading some of your comments. Trying to. Jolly, our planet is the greatest winner at present, with less overproduction, less drawing on the natural resources, less consumerism, less pollution, less eating of animals due to less seafood exported to China, from China. I'm not sure. The practice, Graham, I was just about to read Graham's. Oh, one new message. Virginia, it's the not so techno Chokyi. Trying to scroll down, 2 new messages. Aha. I struggle to generate compassion for mosquitoes. Ha! Jemima, you're right up there with the Dalai Lama. His Holiness says, oh, 1 mosquito, okay, 2 mosquitoes, okay, 3. But then I think His Holiness does live in India where, you know, it can be quite serious. But we also always have this conversation here. What is it? Ross River fever? Is that from mosquitoes? So we have to have wisdom as well. Yes, we have to have compassion for mosquitoes, you know. So I noticed that, I don't know if you've ever let them actually just sit there and take the blood, but they put a lot of effort into the tiniest drop of blood, really. It's phenomenal how much effort. I have to rejoice in that. I also rejoice, us human beings, we have so much intelligence that sometimes we are, or actually, according to the Buddha, always our own worst enemy. You know? Our eneminess comes from there. We get very complicated. Animals are straightforward. So, you know, they are able, what they're able to do, they're able to do very well. There's a whole lot they can't do, but they're very skillful at things. I mean, I would not have the patience to sit there for so long for the tiniest drop of blood. It's like, really? That's all? You know? So we find something to admire about the being that we have aversion for, thinking that actually they're quite skillful in that, you know? The other day I gave a bush turkey, was giving the bush turkey some different bits of veggies and see what it liked. And I gave some zucchini. I didn't think it wanted the zucchini. It took the seeds, but then only because it had eaten the carrot already. So then it put a leaf over the top. It was stashing it for later. So someone around here who knows more about birds than me was very excited, going, oh, really? So they hoard? Well, don't ask me, but apparently so. I don't know. Kept it for later. So, you know, we find something to delight in that they are capable of, rather than, yes, the mind of aversion that says they were a nuisance to me. You know, the I arises, and this is the basis of that mind of aversion, you know, is the I saying, how dare you take my blood, you know, or annoy me, or keep me awake at night. Or, I mean, we probably don't think it's in gross terms as that, but that's the mind underneath it, the mind grasping at this I that exists where, you know, that we puff up, that we elaborate stories, oh, I've got to look after and nourish. We've been doing that since beginningless time. The self-cherishing thought has brought all our problems. So it's only through the cherishing others that we get our happiness. It's on dependence of others. So that mosquito is a great teacher of patience. Fantastic. How else am I going to learn it? Like if everybody's, you know, the Dalai Lama says, he says, it's very difficult for me to, you know, practice, you know, a lot of these things because everyone's so nice to me, except the mosquitoes. He knows the mosquitoes aren't nice to him. They don't differentiate between the Dalai Lama and anybody else. Maybe they prefer the Dalai Lama because they've got nice energy. Anyway, so we just work with what we can. I want to read that one. Deb said something about LPP. I'm scrolling back. I think I'm scrolling back. No Mozzies at Coolum Beach. We'll come and visit when we can. Okay, it's going to take me too long to work that out. Sorry, Deb. Unless you write it, Deb, write it again. Write your message again, and then I'll hopefully see it come up at the bottom, because I'm not very good on the scrolling department. Okay, I did say we're on session 2. So here we are, expanding the heart of love and compassion. So we have to, this is on the basis of feeling a connectedness with others. So first of all, it starts with ourselves. All of these practices start with ourselves. And this is reiterated in that, you know, widening the circle of love, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. First of all, seeing the goodness within our own selves, seeing our own goodness. And, you know, for some people in our culture, that is confronting. It's sad, but true. So why do we have to focus on the goodness within ourselves? Because we often focus on what's not good, don't we? We give ourselves a hard time. This is where we are our own worst enemies. So oh, I see. Deb said, how would you approach the Porsche guy through LPP? Well, sadly, unless, well, not sadly, but the reality is, so through the Liberation Prison Project, thank you for that question, we would not approach the Porsche guy. Yeah, because we follow, as the Buddha taught because requested. So very fortunately, the Buddha was requested to teach. Otherwise, it'd be a problem, because we wouldn't have, would be even more problem in the world, because we wouldn't have the teachings and be here, and, you know, ourselves being these bodhisattvas in training, baby bodhisattvas, taking one step at least in the right direction every day. So little baby steps. But following in that, you know, not teaching unless asked. Also for the prison project, of course, we make it known in prisons that, you know, there are materials, and we put it in the library and the chapel. And actually, it's been quite interesting in this time, you know, connecting with chaplains and seeing who's allowed to visit, who's not. You know, there was an announcement one day that nobody was allowed to visit prisons, and the next day that was revoked. So there was a bit of time and confusion. But a lot of people are not allowed to visit, and we're actually sending out all this material at the moment to the people who are engaging in the project, all the practices we've been asked to do, and so they're receiving that material, because we had to check that they could receive, and we had a few obstacles with some of the overseas, you know, not being able to go to the post office and stuff. So anyway, we're overcoming where we can, getting that material out. So that we hear back from them what the experience is for them in prison. You know, I mean, those of us here at Chenrezig, when they say you can exercise in your backyard, we've got like 165 acres. So, you know, we're not suffering on that level of, you know, we can exercise here. Whereas if you're stuck in lockdown, in lockdown, I said to them, you know, those of you in lockdown, where you can't compassionately distance, you know, what are their experiences? So hopefully we'll be able to hear those and share those. It's, yeah, very interesting. So this guy in the Porsche, unless he were to reach out to us, we wouldn't be going and saying, oh, by the way, we can help you. Anyway, so that's the same, isn't it? Our teachers, they can, you know, if you think about Lama Zopa Rinpoche or His Holiness Dalai Lama, you know, they don't come up to you and say, I've been observing you for some time and I really think that I could give you a few tips. What do? They teach. Of course, they give the tips all the time. There's limitless advice that we can follow. So the same's available to him should he ever want it. But in the meantime, we can hold him in our prayers just like everybody else, not just him. Because I also thought he was so abusive to that poor constable who was trapped under the truck at the time, already in huge suffering. And to hear that abuse in her mind was not happy for her, wouldn't have been nice for her mind at the time of death. You know, we talk about how we want to make it nice and peaceful and calm, and well, she had everything but. So compassion for the lot of them. So, okay. So seeing the goodness within ourselves, we need to focus on, because we're very good at focusing on what we measure ourselves up to be not adequate. And that is, as Lama Yeshe said, the most disgusting waste of time. You know, the mind of, oh, I can't, I'm no good, beat ourselves up, disgusting waste of time. So seeing our own goodness, because that's what we're cultivating, that's what we have to develop strongly, the strength of within our own mind. Imagine his rebirth, the Porsche guy. So sad for him. You only have to, yeah, so sad for him. Absolutely. Remembering the love and kindness we've received from others. So if we contemplate that, you know, we're talking about the love of a mother for her only child, the kindness is shown by a parent and so forth. But if we think about every sentient being equally, even this life, all that we've received from them, everything, our whole existence, our whole everything around us, all our possessions, all our, well, our friends, all our food, all our teachings that we receive from any teacher. You know, we can follow the examples of our lamas who, you know, who put in their merit field is their ABC teacher, you know, the one who taught them the alphabet, because with the alphabet you can learn the Dharma. And so, you know, all of those, from all the teachers who've ever taught us anything, anyone who's ever taught us anything, plus, you know, that's kept us alive, all of those who gave their lives for sometimes for just one meal that we're eating. Profound. But think too of the love and kindness we have shared with others, develop this closeness to ourselves. I too, what, you know, all the love, loving concern I've showed to others, all the kindnesses I've shown to others, whether I've done that directly, you know, by my interactions with others, or indirectly through my practices, in which it can be all beings, you know. So really cultivate a sense of high regard for remembering that in ourselves. So important, you know, and reflecting our own Buddha nature, that we have the capacity to become a Buddha because we have this potential within us. We have Buddha nature within us. And tapping into that is what we do in our meditation, in our practice, when we contemplate developing all these virtues, you know. So we're talking about before that, you know, everything that we accomplish by this aspiration of bodhicitta, you know, that we're able to cultivate a mass of virtues through this. And this is why it takes a shorter time than on the, you know, sort of, I've been trying to avoid up until now the word Hinayana, but the path of the lower vehicle takes a lot longer, because these practices are so much more powerful in generating these positive states of mind. So we have to, if we're training to be a Buddha, just look at what a Buddha does. doesn't judge, doesn't criticize us. So here we're letting go of thoughts of self-judgment, of self-criticism. As soon as you see that arise in the mind, let go of the mind that grasps at that. It will arise. Those thoughts will come because we've habituated to it. But if we let go of the grasping at that, that is what, it's the grasping mind that places the imprints on the mental continuum. So release that energy, release it, release it, release it, let it go, let it go, let it go. Do the best we can. And on the basis of cultivating this sense of appreciation for ourselves and our capacities, we have to really have strong conviction in our capacities. We say, well, I'm not a Buddha yet, but I can generate compassion for more people than I'm doing right now. I think I can say that. I can generate love for more beings than I'm doing right now. I can say that, right? Appreciation for all of that. And not only that, but I want to. How many beings in the world, just don't want to go there? Just having the thought, having the wish to engage in Dharma at all for a nanosecond is the result of vast accumulations of merit from past lives. That itself is mind-blowing. So never underestimate what you're doing right now, just contemplating the possibility is profound, has a profound effect on the environment, a profound effect on your internal environment, on your mental continuum, develops our perseverance, our resilience. If we can see when we beat ourselves up, what does that do to the mind? It makes us depressed, it makes us deflated, it makes us feel dejected. It's a very disempowering mind. It's sort of like, why would we want that? We don't want that. But when we put our mind towards virtue and our possibilities and our potential, because that's limitless, it's an incredibly powerful mind. So more of that. And then we cultivate a sense of closeness and relatedness with others. So as we've discussed, seeing all beings as our mothers, all beings, past lives, on the basis of continuity of mind, on the basis of, in all of these previous lives, I've been connected with other beings. Someone had to be my mother in each one of those lives, whatever being I was in that life, mother, pig, turkey, mosquito. There you go. Think about your mosquito of the mummy of the previous life. I bet you loved her then. Thanks, Mum. Gave me a mosquito body. Gzit. So remembering their kindness for beginningless past lives, it's overwhelming. As I said, just think of my mother of this life. I couldn't get to the bottom of her kindness. When I was caring for my mother at the end, towards the end of her life, and she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, dear. I'm taking you away from your career." And I said, "No, Mum, look, you are my career right now. This is it, most precious time to be with you." And I said quite truthfully, "I could never repay your kindness." And that was wonderful to have the opportunity to say that and be able to say it quite truthfully. So thinking about that, but we can think about that to, that generating that wish to repay the kindness of all beings. So when I was in Vajrayana Institute in Sydney, and when Vajrayana Institute was in Newtown, so walking down the main street of Newtown, and there used to be a couple of people who, were begging, out on the street. And one of my friends who lived at the centre at that time, and this particular woman that she would give money to probably on a daily basis, and this woman would say, "Thank you." And my friend would say, "No, thank you." And this woman looked at her like, "What?" And she's she says, in her mind, of course, she's thinking, this, you have given me the opportunity to practice generosity. I needed that opportunity. There you were. I got to practice generosity. So remembering the kindness to repay that towards others, however we can repay their kindness, you know. So contemplating even especially the ones we have difficulty with, isn't it? Thinking that even in this lifetime, what kindnesses have they shown me? You know, what kindness have they shown me? Even it can be, you know, of course, we hear of the great lamas, you know, great practitioners of the past who kept someone around them to irritate them so they could practice. Thank you for your kindness to irritate me. I mean, it's an advanced technique, right? But give it a go. So a sense of closeness in the fact that in terms of the human realm, we're all members of the one human family. And we see this right now with the worldwide pandemic. You know, equally, fear of suffering, the actual, you know, actually having COVID-19, or the fear of that. And of course, depending on where you are in the world, that fear might be more extreme than other places, you know, even though here in the Sunshine Coast, we were a hotspot for a while. I even didn't know we were a hotspot for a while because we were all in lockdown here. So we feel very safe in our little Chenrezig bubble, if you like, Pure Land, when there's a lot of fear and so forth. But we get fear. We understand fear, you know, and you still, you know, at the beginning stages, I remember being scared to cough. You know, if you cough, everyone runs a mile. But now I'm scared of complacency. So there's fear, right? So we get that. This is our humanity. We are one human family collectively now experiencing the ripening karma that has ripened as this disease. And then, as I said, you know, well, Thakthong Gampo, actually, we might end at the end of this with his, because of it being Anzac Day in particular, his prayer for, Maggie made these. So these, so the rosemary for remembrance and the little poppy which she refashioned. So we had it at our little dawn service down the Nanda Master's garden. She refashioned from the flowers that were made for offerings when Lama Zopa was here last time. So there were a few things that came from, oh, and other candles that were used that came from when Lama Zopa was here last time. So we're like, thank you, Rinpoche. I think you're guiding us how to do these things. But Thakthong Gyalpo and the predictions from Guru Rinpoche about, well, he was an emanation of Guru Rinpoche. So predictions of Guru Rinpoche about, you know, the worldwide disease followed by worldwide famine and then worldwide war. And as Lama Zopa keeps saying, all the world. He makes a great emphasis of that and then was talking about, maybe some of you will watch those teachings, and the end of this world. And, you know, you're hearing this and thinking, oh, that's in some distant eon, you know. And then I saw the UN announcement that on top of coronavirus pandemic, we're going to have worldwide famine. I thought, whoa, this is coming quickly. So then the fear arises, doesn't it? So we can have compassion for all of us with that same fear. But of course, you know, we know everything's a dependent arising, and by the virtue of our practice, just like Thakthong Gyalpo, okay, he was a great holy being, had a great power to be able to pacify, so that when the famine came in that area in Tibet, and he was there doing these practices and prayers that Rinpoche has given the transmission of now, is that those with pure view saw grain raining down from the sky. Anyway, the famine was pacified and the wars were pacified. So, you know, the power of the mind, because our karma is created by what? The mind, you know, by our deluded states of mind, by our desirous attachment, by our aversion, main one, our ignorance, and then all the other manifestations of all the other afflictions, so that we can transform this. In fact, we are. The environment is momentarily taking a breather and regenerating. Do you have to believe in reincarnation to practice Buddhism? Definitely not. But it depends how far you want to take your practice and what your practice of Buddhism is. So, as the Buddhist said, you don't take anything I said as truth just because I said so. You check up. So Buddha is always saying, use your own wisdom. And so we engage, even all of this presentation, right? You engage in logical reasoning. So just like we engage in logical reasoning, say just on the basis of this life, I can see that my mind discriminates because I've checked up how it does, how it has friends, how it has beings I dislike. They're not all human. But I think it's the human ones we most have difficulty with. We just sort of remove ourselves from the animal ones, it seems, if we can. Although somebody yesterday was talking about the invasion of ants in their hut. So the mind gets a bit of aversion to that, and then you, anyway, also the ants, you know, if you observe the ants, they're quite communal. They help each other out. You know, I plugged up a hole in my bathroom where they were coming in, and then they found another one. And then the ones who hadn't got the message yet were using the old trails, and the other ones came back to say, nope, you've got to go this way. She's plugged that one up. It was very fascinating to watch. Sitting on my toilet. It's fascinating. Anyway, so appreciating that. So yes, so, but what is the logic we apply here? In this moment of mind, which is now past, can only come from a previous moment of mind, because mind can only come from mind. Mind is not matter, so it's not like the table came from the wood and the wood came from, etc., tree, and etc., etc. Mind, because it's not material, in other words, nowhere yet has a scientist discovered where mind is in the body, because you can't measure mind. In fact, it's immeasurable. That's why we say it's like space, immeasurable space. So hence we have immeasurable capacity. Hence we have immeasurable capacity to transform our mind. So, but it can only come from a previous moment of mind. And where did that previous moment of mind come from, Colleen? It came from a previous moment of mind. So if we track back from now to this morning, there's certain things we remember, isn't it? We remember, oh yes, what was happening, and you know, when I woke up and before I woke up. So there we can track back. It's not wanting to relive every moment. It's to see the connectedness of every moment to the previous moment. It's how memories come, isn't it? So the past. And so we keep tracking back. We can track back maybe to our childhood. Some people maybe can track back to their birth or close to their birth. So my uncle, for example, my mother, his sister, was older than him, and he said to her, you know, well into his adulthood, he said, I've got this memory. I was in my mother's arms, so he was a baby, and there were people around wearing black, and they were fighting. He remembered that as a baby. So watch out what you do in front of your baby. No, it's true. He had that memory, and it popped into his mind. And she could say, oh yes, that was at so-and-so's funeral. You were 6 months old, and they were fighting over the property at the funeral, as families do. Okay, apparently, some families do. So, you know, he had that memory, but he had it validated. Yes, that is an actual memory. It's not a dream. But we can track back, we can track back. And then we say, well, before I was born, I had a mind. So if you follow, Colleen, the Buddha's presentation is that at the time of conception, as a human being, you have the sperm, you have the egg, and then you have mind. So the sperm and egg are physical, right? They come from your mum and dad, or for whoever's surrogate and whatever. And then the mind comes from your previous moment of mind that has zapped in there. So then where did that come from is a previous moment of mind. So it's hard for us to see that, isn't it? It's, well, impossible to see that. So this is the Buddha's presentation about tracking back, seeing the continuity of mind. And if we come to the conclusion that, yes, mind can only come from mind and there are previous moments of mind, then we have to conclude that we've had past lives. Therefore, reincarnation, rebirth, whatever label we want to give that, in whatever realm of existence we're reborn into. So it's a challenge, but I think that we have hints in this life. For me, déjà vu does it. You have a feeling, I've been here before, but you know in this life, I haven't been here before. Or you've had that encounter before, but you know in this life you haven't had. How do we explain that? The only explanation that has sat with me is that that must have been from a past, and just like my uncle had that memory from when he was a baby, there's something activated from a past life. Another way that is useful to think about it, I'll use the example of my family. I'm one of 6 children who survived. My brothers are good at computers. I'm hopeless. We are all good at music. We were all, you know, Von Trapp, Sound of Music. We did all that stuff. I mean, we were raised in an all singing, all dancing family. Of course, now I'm a nun, I'm not doing those things. Or one of my brothers does remind me, he was always in the lighting box. But nonetheless, we were a musical family. We were a musical family. So you could say there were conditions around that. There definitely were. Mum and dad, you know, all singing, all dancing. So we were born into a family like that. That's clear. But my brothers are good at computers and I'm not. Same conditions, same family. And in my family, as far as my parents were concerned, whether you were a girl or a boy, same education. You know, it wasn't like, oh, the girls should do this and the boys, same. Equal opportunity. But we don't have equal tendencies within our mind. Just check up in your own family, whether it's your children, whether it's your parents, whether it's your siblings, whether, you know, and so forth. You can check up things that you're good at, that they're not good at, and things that they're good at, that you're not good at. How do we get good at something? We practice it. We do it over and over again. So if it wasn't in this lifetime, it must have been in a past life. So for example, the example of, you know, child prodigies, Mozarts and things like that. From almost, it seemed, out of the womb and onto composing. I knew it took a little bit longer than that, but nonetheless, there was like that capacity in that life. Or people who are good at, you know, sports. Of course, you train in that. So we check up, we see what are the possibilities. And then, of course, there are people who like Jim Tucker and his mentor, even Ian Stevenson in particular, who did extensive research on people who did recall past lives, different cultures, different belief systems, children. Because by the time of 7 years old, apparently, mostly you've forgotten all of that. But there are, you know, they tested these kids, you know, that had memories brought into this life from past lives, even to the extent of, I can't remember, maybe it was Brazil, where one kid and one family want to go and live because they were reborn into the same neighborhood with the parents of the previous life because they regard them as their parents. So both their parents, both those families were open to it. So they did that. And then when they were about 7, they came back to the one of this life. So we check up, we analyze, but the main potent one is the one of continuity of mind that says it has to have had a previous moment. It didn't, you know, the mind doesn't pop out of nowhere. Everything has a cause. So the cause is its previous moment, its previous moment, its previous moment. So this way, so for now, if that all sounds too much, just put it on the back burner. And then, you know, other things come along. Some things are easy for us, you know, it's just like, yep, I like that. It's not to dismiss. Of course, the Buddha said, if you can prove anything I said wrong, go ahead. Wrong, but you've got to prove it is incorrect. Chuck it out. And so it's good to analyze and see if I can prove it wrong. Because as the Buddha said, I can't implant realizations. I can't eliminate, you know, the karmic imprints, like, you know, your afflictions, and take away those seeds of your minds. All I can do is show the way. And the Buddha showed the way by his own example in his own lifetime, but, you know, also by the vast 84,000 teachings, antidotes to 84,000 afflictions. So we just check, we check. And that's what's good. That's what I really love about Buddhism, is the Buddha said, it's all up to you. We do the work. We're the boss of our own minds. We analyze, we check up. We make it through our meditation and contemplation. We come to an understanding of what we hear. So we develop the wisdom of hearing, the wisdom of reflection. We discuss with each other, and I'd love to have had much more discussion because we're used to being very bubbly here, and it hasn't been able to be like that. Good. Colleen's going to reflect on that. Thank you. Okay, so the closeness of others. So again, as for ourselves, seeing the goodness in others, whether it's the mosquito, whether it's the ant, whether it's the noisy neighbor, or I'm not sure, whoever. Find what is their goodness. So if we look at ourselves as human beings, and then again, check up, the cause of having rebirth as a human is your practice in previous lives of ethics, of good behavior, good conduct, good moral conduct. Most likely engaging in the Dharma now as having, in the context of having taken vows, because that makes it more powerful. Even your sleep, you know, every moment more powerful in terms of what you can, you generating that power. You know, Geshe Sotram was saying last year, without beings, I wouldn't have this. Thank you. One of those beings is here. Venerable Chokyi got me the water. So Geshe Sotram was saying last year, he was asked a question and he said, you set your motivation in the morning, may it be of benefit to others. So already that's this motivation. You know, may everything I think, say, and do be of benefit to others. At least what I say and do, you know, may it be of benefit to others. And then you go to, and then even you sleep, even it's daytime. What you're doing is generating a mind of bodhicitta, even you're asleep. So you're creating great virtue by your sleeping. Of course, if, you know, as the Dalai Lama says, if you have a good 8 hours sleep at night, then your mindfulness is much sharper. You know, your ability to concentrate, your ability to meditate, your ability to do anything and focus. So, of course, we want to do that. So seeing goodness within others, seeing Oh yes, I was talking about what it takes to be born human. Yes, ethics, good conduct, practice of generosity, and making stainless prayers. This is particularly in terms of a precious human rebirth. But the minimum is the ethics, isn't it? Good conduct. And reflecting on the fact that each one of us wants to be happy and not to suffer. So in that way, we're all connected. As His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, you know, differences of color, creed, culture, religion, all secondary, all secondary. So it's a danger to make that the primary focus in the world, just because somebody's skin's a different color or somebody speaks a different language. Actually, I'm impressed by everyone who speaks different languages fluently, because I'm totally not a linguist, even though I've attempted many languages. So, thank you to all of those. So looking at the ways we are connected and developing our loving kindness on the basis of that sense of connectedness. Because otherwise it becomes some sort of airy-fairy theoretical thing out there. So even when we were doing that brief meditation, I said to, you know, that if we reflect on, you know, the one we're less familiar with, the so-called stranger, the person we don't really know, if we just make it globally, everybody in the world, because, you know, the 7.6 billion that I don't know, it's okay, but it's not as powerful as taking a real being, because we're making that connection, and then we expand out to all other beings from that, from those real beings that we use as our objects of practice. Yeah. So loving kindness, of course, towards ourselves, most necessary. How can we on earth have loving kindness towards others if we can't have towards ourselves? You know, as I say, when you get on the plane, if you need the oxygen mask, put it on yourself first, then you can help others, isn't it? So our loved ones, our friends. In my notes, I've got start with people who are living and to whom we don't have strong sexual desire. This is not just if you're monastic, right? But, you know, think of your dear ones, your friends, in a way that will generate the pure love. So that's the idea of this, so that we're not contaminating it with other feelings, trying to get the purity of that feeling. And then, as we did previously, extending that out, that loving concern out towards acquaintances, the ones we labeled strangers I was just talking about. All of them too don't want to suffer. All of them too want to be happy. All of them too have family, friends. I think we saw this with the police officers who lost their lives very quickly. One of the police officers, his partner came out and he was saying how much, you know, he was also a family person, and, you know, he wasn't just a police officer, and they did marathons and so forth and so forth. So you get a sense of that person too is not, you know, has their own connections, but also their own emotions and their own fears and their own desires and sufferings and so forth. So really connect, in other words. And then the difficult ones, that they too want to be happy. I always think it's easy in one way to want their happiness, because if the one who creates difficulty for you, if their mind is peaceful and happy, it's a win-win situation, isn't it? You know, it's totally win-win, because as the Dalai Lama says, peace in the mind develops peace in the world. So the extent to which your mind is disturbed is the extent to which you disturb others. So this can be good for me, for my object of compassion, Mr. Porsche, Richard Pusey or something. Imagine this person in a vulnerable situation, or imagine them showing a likable aspect, even if you have to think of them as when they were a baby. Hopefully they were at one point a contented baby. Hopefully, at one moment, if not many more, you know. Directing your attention to the suffering, their suffering. Absolutely, that's easy to do, isn't it? So the other example that I found profound at the time, Manharon Manos, you know, in Sydney, when the Sydney siege, the Lint cafe thing. And afterwards, when we were having these interfaith services and praying for the 2 people who died, and excuse me, there were 3 who died, he died as well. It's a win-win to pray for him to be liberated from all of that, so that in whatever next suffering existence, can you imagine the torment? But then also creating more torment for others, because that's where his mind was at the time. So, and then you can think, you know, I don't have to like them. I don't have to agree with them. Very important. We don't have to agree with each other. If we don't agree with each other, we'd become a little bit boring, because we do like a lot of, in fact, by debating, particularly in this tradition, we get our minds sharper. So we need the adversity, really. So I don't have to like what someone's doing, has done, but I can wish for them to find true happiness, because what's true happiness? Buddhahood. Absolutely, go for it. So whatever mind, whatever way we can cultivate that, you know, use that, whatever reasoning we can give ourselves. So here, I've gone a couple of minutes over time. So I think you have a bit more to Can I mute everyone from my end? I don't know when that was, because it says it's mute all. Okay, so I just wanted to read that prayer to finish with. The prayer from Tagtong Gyalpo, sorry, I'll say that again, Tagtong Gyalpo. He designed all the iron bridges and so forth. Great engineer, great architect. So this is the Vajra speech of Mahasiddhi Tagtong Gyalpo, words of truth, pacifying the danger of weapons, especially as this is Anzac Day and we want to enter all wars forever. May peace arise in the mind of all beings. Great, loving, victorious one, Arya, sublime, compassionate-eyed looking one, wrathful, victorious Hayagriva, perfect, pure Tara, and so forth, objects of refuge whose holy names eliminate all dangers upon mere hearing, who are compassionate in nature, please pay attention to me. When the sentient beings of the time of quarreling and of flourishing of the 5 degenerations are tormented by fighting and intense suffering, from the explosion of a great ocean of evil karma and jealousy, please dry this ocean up by the strength of your transcendental wisdom and compassion. Also, by letting fall a great nectar rain of loving kindness on the transmigratory beings whose hatred is a blazing fire, please grant your blessings for happiness and auspiciousness to increase by their recognizing each other as being like parents. Through your defeating the multitude of vicious evil spirits who, by entering someone's mental continuum, change it instantly into the mind of an Asura. From now on, may they never roam in this region. Please also cause all the sentient beings who have died in war from now on to abandon all evil karma, the cause and result, and be miraculously reborn in blissful land. Please also lead all others to that pure land. Please cause all those who are born and die to have long lives and not have sickness, to stop all their quarreling and fighting, and to enjoy a life in the 10 virtues. Please make rainfall at the right time, harvest to be always to be good, and auspiciousness to increase in all habitats and for all inhabitants. By the ultimate reality, which is pure in nature, unbetraying cause and result, which has that ultimate reality, and the compassionate Guru, mind-sealed deity, and rare sublime ones, may my pure and extensive prayers be accomplished. Okay, may there be virtue. So we'll leave it there for today. Okay, so I will unmute again, just on the possibility that we might be able to hear you. But anyway, you can say goodbye to each other, I think, because this is not working for me. Oh,
Yes, it did.
Yes, working now.
no,
Yes.
it's still
That's
got everyone
working.
on mute, I think.
Thank you, Venerable Chokyi.
Good.
Hello.
Okay, so
We can
wish
hear
you
you.
well for the rest of today, and see you
Thank you so
tomorrow,
much.
hopefully, or, you know, wish you well anyway.
Thank you, Venerable
If
Chokyi.
you're not able to be here tomorrow as well. There were a few people who joined after I sent out the notes. So if you wanted the notes, send me an email. Or some people are doing the Discovering Buddhism course on an ongoing basis, in which case they're doing the readings and answering some questions. But in any case, there's lots of things to read there, or heap of material. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chokyi.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, Julie. Bye, Leonie.
Thank you.
Bye, Tim.
Thanks a lot.
Bye, Kerry. Sharon.
Bye. Bye.
Sue.
Big love.
Hey. Hey, I heard you.
Hey. Hey, I heard you. Hey, I can hear you. Thank you.
Oh, it's a lot of noise.
Sounded like a possum.
Oh, good. Margot came back and fixed everything.
Well done, Margot.
Bye. See you
Thanks,
tomorrow.
Marco.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
See you
Bye-bye.
tomorrow. Ciao.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
I'm trying to end it.
Because now